Welcome to our podcast from the ground up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their success, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake here in Villarreal, and here with us today we have Burnt Banksy, the founder and CEO of Burnt. Burnt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, I know you're just coming off another podcast. We're jumping right into another one. So happy to have you on board here. Let me share a little bit about who you are with the audience so they know,
Cool.
And then we'll dive into your story here. So Burnt Banksy first made global headlines with the burning of an authentic Banksy artwork in an effort to prove the concept of digital scarcity. The act received universal acclaim and was covered by leading publications such as Bloomberg, CoinDesk, GQ, Cointelegraph, BBC, CBS, Hyperbeast, ArtNet, TechCrunch, and many others. Burnt Banksy went on to fund Burnt, which is building the generalized abstraction layer of blockchain, XION. Burnt has raised over $11 million from prominent investors, including Animoca, Multicoin, Hashkey, Spartan, and recently announced Circle strategic investment as well. We got a lot going on here, Burnt. Before we really dive in, share with us where you're joining us from today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually in New York right now. We're in New York right now. I've been here for like 8 years now, actually.
Oh, wow. Great. Are you originally from there?
Originally from Florida. Yeah, I did a reverse snowbird thing.
Yeah, I lived in New York City, and everyone, that I recall, went down to Florida and got out of the cold.
Yeah. My parents were born in New York and then went to Florida, and they're like, "You're fucking crazy."
Welcome back to the city. It's my favorite city in the world. Great. Well, excited to have you on here. We're going to talk about your story, and we're going to talk about the product that you've created. But before we do that, kind of give us a little background of you kind of growing up. What were your experiences like that helped shape you to eventually, at some point, becoming an entrepreneur?
I didn't like being told what to do. I was terrible at it. What shaped me in being an engineer is I always loved to break the rules. I would like find very creative. I did very well in school, but I didn't like to study, and I didn't like to follow rules that I didn't think made sense. And I think hilariously, a lot of those kind of traits, and especially getting out of trouble a lot, kind of talking my way out of trouble a lot, were weirdly very good traits in kind of being a founder and like kind of seeing these holes.
Yeah, contrarian views and not following the general population, but looking at ways to kind of carve out your own path and hopefully solve some problems in the process. I love that. Is the company that we're about to talk about and the tools that you've created, is this your first startup, or kind of walk us through your sort of background in the startup ecosystem?
Yeah. I worked for a startup before, also in the crypto industry called Injective. They do a blockchain for finance, but originally kind of started off as a decentralized perpetuals exchange for using VDS to prevent front running. From there, went directly to Burnt Finance and built early standards on Solana. We can kind of talk about that, but it's funny. I would say that technically I am a first-time founder, although the company has been around for 3 years with a very serious pivot after the first year, and so it does feel like my second startup.
Yeah, pivots can be, tough and take a long time, and
totally different team. Yeah, I mean, it was everything. New cap table, like a new round of cap table. So it's very interesting in that kind of capacity where it does feel like a second company.
Yeah, great. Well, before we even dive into this, I'm really curious about your name, Burnt Banksy. You've told the story to me, but for the audience that doesn't know, give us the what happened, how it came about, and what were you out to prove in doing it?
Yeah, it's great. So the reason I'm called Burnt Banksy is because I bought a Banksy piece and lit it on fire. Burnt Banksy. And we were trying to prove a point at the time, right? And I mean, I have to paint you a picture, right? Because this is 2021, January, February 2021. There was no $69 million Beeple auction yet. There was no Bored Ape Yacht Club yet. There was nothing. There was CryptoKitties. There was CryptoPunks. They were not hundreds of thousands of dollars. ETH was in its three figures, and we still loved it, right? Like me and a couple of friends. This is when I was with Injective, right? And we were collecting punks. We got a couple lost in a hack, but we were also collecting crypto kitties as well. My parents would be like, if there's no value in it, it's not my living room. I can't touch it. What's the value, right? And I think we're very early on. We're pretty early to this understanding of the benefits of NFTs, right? And I think, just to take a step back, a lot of people see NFTs as what they became, which was, a monkey chewing bubblegum that was worth $250,000. But I think from the ground level, when you kind of came before that, a lot of it was this promise of, number one, this kind of globalization promise of breaking down borders and anyone can be an artist. And for the first time in this cesspool that is the internet, we can prove ownership, which is extremely important, right? And not like one of those, hey, I just named a star after you, which doesn't mean anything and live on a database in some bankrupt company's, unpaid AWS rack, right? But this kind of very public, long-term ownership, right? And so, kind of going back to the story of Burnt Banksy, we were getting made fun of a lot, right? With value in it. So I said, you know what? You'll get this kind of concept a lot, but it's like, fuck you. Let me take something that has value, right? Bought it for $90,000. It's called Morons. It was, making fun of people who bought NFTs or bought real pieces from a Sotheby's auction. We lit it on fire. We had Vice professionally photograph it, and we sold it as an NFT for $400,000. And thus kind of proving the point that the value held, and there is value in it being digital, especially as we enter a digital realm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, gutsy for one. You probably had some real support behind it, probably maybe some backlash from others.
Absolutely
You never know.
none.
And so, but I like the bravery of doing it and proving a point. There's a lot of innovation that's happening in Web 2 and Web 3, more like in terms of, crypto and different parts of technologies that are becoming, I think, the future. But, it takes trailblazers to actually create it. And you have to have, intelligence and strategy, but you also have to have guts. And so I'm really interested to kind of talk about your company. You raised $11 million. It's not just you with an idea. You actually had investors behind it saying, this is a real business with a real business idea. We're going to get into what that is. But, it starts with the leader. And they're really betting on you as much as they are the technology and the company that you're building. So what you've created, talk to us a little bit about the space that you're building in Web3, but more importantly, what problem are you trying to solve with your tools and technology? And then I'm going to take us back a little bit into the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 for maybe listeners that are not very technical. So I know you're very technical. We're going to probably go up and down a little bit in that level, but give us the inspiration behind what you're working on today and what are you trying to solve with it?
So let me actually start just kind of a little out of order on that question, right? Which will be like this Web 2 versus Web 3. As I kind of mentioned before, the internet is a cesspool. When you looked at early versions of the internet, a lot of the early criticisms were no one's going to know what information is real, right? Like, and you got Google, which is really good at indexing and being able to do that. But like, you can't really have this concept of ownership because you always have this kind of, right click and save, right? Like, in addition to like having trusted middle parties and this kind of emphasis on trust, you don't really have a really solid way of having ownership in a digital capacity. And I think are you familiar with the concept of like a co-op apartment building?
Share it with the audience.
All right. So, I mean, it's funny because whenever I tell someone in New York, they're like, oh yeah, of course. I live in a co-op. But, I guess it's a New York thing. But, the idea of a co-op apartment building, let's say there's 10 units in a building, each of them sell for, $1 million a pop. And the only way that you can, as a new entrant, buy an apartment is you have to be approved by the board. Everything approved by the board. And the board is consisted of the people who own the apartments, as compared to like some management rental building that's some management company that you've never heard of. The people who run the show are the people who live in the units, right? And I think you have this interesting concept, similar with like that of a Chabad, which is this kind of group effort, this kind of communal ownership, which is, hey, I live in this building. I want my value to go up, right? Like, I want the value of my apartment to go up. I don't want bad neighbors. I don't want someone who's going to destroy the place and this, that, or the other. And you have a board that votes on this, and that board is consisted of people who all have aligned incentives to, they own what they vote on. And to take that concept, I think that's a very important concept. And if you looked at like late stage WeWork, pre Adam Newman, whatever happened there, a lot of it really kind of resonated with crypto, hilariously enough. Which was this let's bring Chabads here in a way, right? And there's a power in community, there's a power in we. And I think when we talk about crypto and we talk about Web3, there is so many different sections that you can go down, right? You can go down the cryptocurrency route, which I won't be speaking about today. And frankly, I don't really operate in that capacity, right? You can go down the governing voting route, right? But the only thing, like, you kind of bring it down to, you distill it down to this level of, we can now create scarcity online. That's it, right? In a world where it was a sea and it was a cesspool, we have public scarcity, and we have that as a utility, right? What you do with that, whether you create a currency, whether you create a new Spotify, whether you create a new model for making movies, it doesn't matter. Right? At the very core concept of it, it is group consensus of public goods. Great. Now that we got that knocked out, right? It's not really. I don't like to say this difference between Web 2 and Web 3. I think it's additive. It's not a replacement, and I think that's an important kind of distinction. Where I come in is, the current solutions for Web3 are absolutely terrible. They are insular, they are redundant, and they are very built for the people who have been in Web3, like myself, right, for 6 years. It takes hours and not days to onboard to Web3. It's like a 95% drop-off rate when a user is prompted with it. And for an industry that was trying to remove the concept of trust, became very quickly one of the least trusted industries. And I think it's been quite misunderstood of what we're trying to do, because it's also been hidden behind so much, grifting and scams and, people trying to make a quick buck. But, I think when you tie ownership into something and you tie a monetary value to something, it's really hard to avoid that. And I think you're always going to see this kind of short-term volatility when trying to solve these long-term problems. And so where XION comes in is, we want to mimic Web 2 experiences. We've been working for, kind of 2 years on this one iteration of the product, which we work really, really, really hard to mimic Web 2. So imagine, we don't want, for the audience, right, we don't want you to know that you're operating with Web 3. I don't think it's actually inherently important, right? Like, we're recording this on Riverside. Jake, do you know where Riverside is hosted on? Like, I don't. And it doesn't matter, right? Because we're just recording this podcast right now. And I think the benefits of Web3 will mostly come, I think we have this internal saying in the company, which is like also our roadmap and strategy, which is, first of all, we need to provide access to all, and then we can democratize ownership. We can't, otherwise it's this kind of catch-22 of, you're building products for the people who can use them, or you're building infrastructure for nothing. I'm happy to kind of take it from there.
Yeah, got it. I'm going to share my very layman's understanding of Web 2 and Web 3, so that when my mom listens to this podcast and the CEO that's building a $20 million company listens to it, they're going to either say, oh, really intelligent, or that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyway, this is something I pulled off the web. So I just want to kind of walk through it. So from, Web 2.0 was really early 2000s, and it was really more closed off technologies that were created, and applications that were created. If you think about it, going from static web pages to dynamic, this sounds very probably laughable in today's world, because we don't even think about that. But, the growth of social media came out of that. And you had companies like Facebook and YouTube and Wikipedia and Twitter. Those were all Web 2.0 companies. Today, when you talk about Web 3, it's about decentralized and decentralization, and using open source and technologies like smart contracts and decentralized applications and AI and machine learning and different.
And we don't have to bring AI into this.
Yeah, it's not impacting anything. So I think just the framework of the two are very different, but the future is Web3. So where's the bridge that's being built between Web2 and Web3? And it sounds like you're kind of doing some of that, which is, providing the user experience of what we know in Web2 applications and maybe functionality and process, but with Web3 tools and infrastructure that's really the future. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as much of a jump as you might think, right? Like you didn't need to completely destroy everything in Web 1 to go to Web 2. You kind of just realized you were in Web 2. And I think it's probably a pretty negative aspect of the industry that we need to kill everything, in order for something new to thrive, right? Like Netflix came about and it eventually displaced Blockbuster, and innovation will kind of always occur, but that doesn't mean it needs to be like this complete reset, right? So when we look at, Leslie Lamport came out with a concept of distributed systems very long time ago, right? And realistically, Bitcoin was just an application of a distributed system. Like we've always had the tools, we've always had distributed systems, but it's now kind of finding the application in the internet, right? And so, very similarly to how open source has been a thing for, I mean, ever, right? But there's also closed source crypto companies. And I think everyone kind of has their own definitions of what Web3 is, what Web2 is, but I think I think a lot of it is marketing jargon. I loathe the comparison of like, oh, we're going to be making the next Uber killer, because I do believe that the best version of Uber is Uber. Do I think that there's going to be something, new, right? Maybe, right? Maybe there's another thing that comes up, but you want to decentralize Ubers, right? You got a taxi medallion. That is fine. Like, I mean, there's a concept where not everything needs to be replaced in order to be improved. I think things will be improved. And I think you can, what would the future of Uber look like if it was on crypto? A lot of it would be the drivers making more money, right? And then you'd get drivers who went there because they're making more money than Uber. And why? Because it's, there's no middleman to take a real cut. Everyone kind of works for themselves, like they should, and they're not getting absolutely screwed on the fees. There's their own fee market for Ubers, and it's settled very quickly, right? And then the payments are sent out very quickly without this concept of a middleman, right? And so it's not this, we're not shadowy super coders here, as like a lot of people have portrayed us, but a lot of it is just saying, hey, how the fuck do we need the middleman here? Like, we can do this. And a lot of that is achieved through distributed systems. A lot of that needs to be pretty trustless, right? Because you're paying a middleman for that trust to do all of these things, right? So you don't really want to change the trust, the hands of trust. You want to remove the need of it, right? So when you hear this concept of Web3, I think a good way to just imagine it is like, Web 1 was this like one-to-one, right? Oh, you're interacting with one thing, one person. Web 2 was, hey, many people are interacting with one company, and then Web 3 is like these many people are interacting with many people, right? And it's there's not one big company, it's a bunch of people, and the people who have ownership, right? You go to the co-op, right? Imagine if every Uber benefits by Uber, I don't know, crypto Uber, succeeding, or something like that, right? Or you can look at like the Netflix model of this and saying, okay, well, instead of one company giving a lot of money and greenlighting a bunch of projects, what if the community did that and looked more like a crowdsourcing thing? And I think a lot of early concepts of crypto can be seen with like the Kickstarters and the crowdsourcing. And I think a lot of the laws and regulations around crowdsourcing really spurred up a lot of the excitement for crypto.
Yeah. Well said. I like that. Kind of framed it up pretty good here. This podcast is really about innovation, about startup founders, and about business problems being solved with technology. Let's dive now into Burnt and the product. Walk us through what inspired you to create it, but also talk to us about where your tools and infrastructure are being applied.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the inspiration for XION came out of this last bear market, which, we built products before. I've built many products, even kind of personal products, right? But I built it for myself and I built it for my friends, right? And I built it for the people that I knew. When people who have already gone through the onboarding process, who've already lost the thousands of dollars in getting rugged by buying the wrong projects, or lost some NFTs by clicking the wrong link, right? And it's like, at some point it's funny, you ask any crypto developer, and you haven't worked in crypto unless you've lost money in a rug. Which shouldn't be the case, unfortunately, right? But it is what it is, right? And that's kind of the mentality of crypto is it is what it is. It just shit happens. Get used to it, kid. Which I love. But you want to go to like the world. That's not a mentality you can really. And so XION came out this last bear market when it really really struck me that we're at a point where we can do this. We had the team for it, but B, it was when FTX fell and Doe fell and everything like that kind of crashed, it's like, wow, we are so untrusted. Like, that's hilarious to me that this whole time we were trying to build this trustless ecosystem, yet people view us as, untrustworthy. And it was kind of funny to me, right? And, I think I kind of sat there and just realized, like, I was looking at one of my products that I had built, and it was like, people aren't going to be doing this anymore. Like, no one's going to go through the multi-day process for a very long time. No one's going to go through these multi-day process, send money here, learn all these things, because maybe they were doing it in the bull market when things were hot and things were cool and everyone bought a picture of a monkey. But these next few years, no one's going to be touching this stuff. So we need to go to the user. And like, we're at the point now where enough infra is built where we can successfully mimic Web 2. And we believe that, number one, from a physical infra side, removing all the friction is necessary. But also, like, you look at products that are built with crypto, it's just a fucking Robinhood knockoff. And some of them don't even try hard to like design differently. They're just very, very much like, it's gambling, right? Like, they're just exchanges, and NFT marketplaces are just exchanges with JPEGs. And then you can get financial derivatives, which, don't get me wrong, I love them. And I think there's a lot of really exciting derivatives that have come out, like NAMM or whatever, or a kind of perpetual market. You have really exciting financial products that's come out of this. However, you haven't had anything that's really reached the retail user and said, this is important to me, right? And so when you were talking about, the internet, and then, it was pretty siloed, and then Facebooks and the Twitters and the, those start popping up. We don't have that yet. Like, we have very, very, very redundant products that have worked for the insular crowd that crypto is. And I think a lot of that is going back to this, this catch-22, if you would, which is, it doesn't incentivize me to be a product builder, right? Because I can go to infra that's not ready yet, and I can make a shitty product that won't hit the masses, or I can go build infra and then not have a product, for the masses. Right. And so you got to do one before you can do the other. And I think when we talk about that, we need to provide access to all and then redefine ownership. That's our corporate strategy. Right. And it is a very easy 1-2 solution that XION right now in its current infancy. Right. It is, it is looking to provide access to all. Right. And so we have like 100 projects in our ecosystem. Just ran a last testnet with 450,000 wallets or accounts and like 4 million transactions. And so we're definitely kind of on our way and kind of continuously iterating on this process. But a lot of it doesn't stop at the infra layer. I think there's definitely a part of it that's, of course, physical infra, but then a lot of it's mental, right? Like, it's the knowledge barriers, it's the kind of ideas people have about crypto, the negative connotations about it, and just saying, hey, imagine if you were using eBay and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know this was crypto. That's what we want. We want that oh shit moment. Why you can't use credit card is, I'm not going to buy this weird token. What does this mean? I'm not buying this. Oh, it went to zero. Oh, cool. Okay. Like, that's not the future.
Yeah. So you talked about 450,000 digital wallets. You also talked about infra, which is infrastructure. Is the tooling and the infrastructure you're providing for developers to use as they're actually building their tools or their applications for their user base, so that when their customers are using it, it's an automatic, great user experience? And by the way, the tooling and the infrastructure underneath that, which they don't know, is your infrastructure.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, great. And talk about when you started the company and the massive pivot you made to where you're at today. Because every single company we've talked to, we're on episode 145 right now. Every founder that started with the thesis, that maybe went through Y Combinator or Techstars or just bootstrapped and kind of scaled, they started with an idea, it evolved, micro pivots, if you want to call them, and there's major ones. What was one that you could look back and say, if I would have started this company again, I would have done this differently? Or I started with this idea and we started building and we figured out that wasn't going to scale or that wasn't going to work. And now this is what we're building. Walk us through that so others can learn from your experience.
Yeah, and I think I had touched on it a little bit, but when I referred to like my product back then, right, like 2 years ago, we had a decentralized marketplace and we built a lot of early standards on another blockchain called Solana. And we had like 30,000 monthly active users. We did like, for crypto's insane. Sorry, that might not be a lot for Web 2. So that was a lot. There's like 30,000 users in total in crypto, but especially in like 2021.
Right.
So and it was a good. I mean, I liked it, right? And the vision was always the same for that, right? Which was like the reason we did that was we started off with that was because the Banksy burning was, or when we did the Banksy art piece, it was a miserable experience to do NFTs. It was terrible. We didn't, and I'm very highly technical, didn't know how to do it. We had to get help, which should say something. And then even so, right, like with the promise of like providing access to all, we wanted to make everything like we built a no code product for NFTs, did the whole marketplace, wanted everything, done that way. But we looked at this and we looked at like, and I had said it before about like wow, no one's going to use this thing. But, even sitting on this product with like 30,000 monthly active users, it was that conundrum of a crypto product, which is I can either continue working on this shitty product that won't be anything, right? It'll get the crypto crowd, sure, but that's it, right? Like it's not, we're capped right now. Like we are genuinely capped because for every user we want to bring in, will take days and we have to physically handhold them through the entire process. And it's not scalable.
That's wild.
Right? So then you look at, right? And so then you look at what we had to do, and it was, you say build for yourself sometimes, right? And, at the end of the day, that's exactly what we did is we built the environment that we needed at the time to kind of uncap ourselves. As I mentioned, there's like a 95% fall off rate when it comes to people who are prompted with a wallet for crypto. And like, especially when we were trying to build consumer applications, like we were working with a DJ named Afrojack, who's pretty famous. And like the Venn diagram of people who knew what Afrojack was and also were like completely onboarded into crypto and had like did the bridging, did the KYC, did all of this. It was like, why are we even doing this? Like, why are we working so hard on these great partnerships when we are genuinely capped by the technology that we're working on? And so XION was born.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. There's so many different directions you can take a company. I think it starts with trying to understand the problem you're trying to solve and who you're giving it to that's really providing a value. For me, looking at crypto, and I know you're not focused only in crypto, it's much more than that. But, there is this trust issue of, are my funds actually going to be there when I go back to them? Everything's decentralized. So who really is on the hook? Who can I go to that's really going to be able to stand up and say, okay, here's the process. Here's how you get things back. Or maybe it is what you said. It is what it is. And, things happen and you got to figure out how to just kind of suck it up and keep moving forward. But I really like the fact that there is a business model that is actually solving a problem in that space. How do you make money? Like for a lot of our customers, it's, they're
Jake,
a SaaS
I'm going
company.
through a tunnel. No, I'm just kidding.
There's many different ways, and feel free to share, feel free not to share. But at the end of the day, look, you raise capital. Obviously, investors know that there is a path to executing and building something big.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's very obviously a great question. The revenue kind of comes in actions that are taken. Whether that be small percentage of every monetary transaction or, if you're familiar with the term gas fees on crypto, effectively we abstract it so a user will never see the concept of a gas fee. But if I paid you $1, or let's say there was like a processing fee on eBay, right? Like I paid you $1.05, and then you know, I don't know, 2 of those cents went to Amex, and then 3 of those cents went to, it's a lot lower. It's like 0.0003 cents, but went to kind of what you would consider revenue. It gets a lot more complicated when you talk about a crypto project because of decentralization and kind of you need to secure the network, and you need to, you're not really vying for an IPO, right? Like we're not trying to be in the Nasdaq, or the S&P there, right? And so we're trying to build decentralized networks, and so I think a lot of conversations around like corporate governance and structure, unfortunately, it's really hard to answer with those concepts in mind. And I won't. We'd be here for another hour if I tried to kind of talk about how the inner dynamics of decentralized organizations worked. But
Yeah.
for like the easiest way to imagine it would just be like taking a small bit, like a super minuscule amount of every kind of transaction that kind of occurs, and yeah, I'll stop it there because it can get confusing.
Yeah, no. And, look, in financial services or any company that has transactions go through, that's pretty standard. You take a cut of the transaction
Mm-hmm.
and you provide a big, huge, massive value to why they use your platform or your service, your tools. So that's to be expected. You just don't always know how it works. And for the most part, it doesn't really matter to the user as long as they're getting a value out of a system or a platform. So just curious to understand, when you take funds from a company that's investing in you, like they want to know what the plan looks like, and 100% I know
Yeah.
they do. We don't have to go into all the details here, but good to kind of hear the thinking behind it. You have a lot of followers on social platforms, not just a few, hundreds of thousands, 170,000 on this platform, 180,000 on that platform. You're really building a community and a lot of buy-in to what you're creating and working on. For those that want to actually try and create communities or build that engagement, what's worked for you? Because it seems like you've done an amazing job there.
Thank you. Thank you. What's worked? It's funny. It is a little different in crypto because our borders are so global. It is so easy to reach everybody in crypto. Like when I say everybody, I mean everyone is not in America, right? Like, we really don't even market to Americans. Actually, legally, we don't actually market to Americans, right? And so, but globally, it's people are really excited about crypto, and once you get out of America, it is the hardest thing in the world to really get is an American bank account, right? And people are really excited about the infrastructure in crypto as a whole, and I think a lot of crypto follows crypto, and I think we're obviously very early, but on a more specific basis for people to looking to build their communities and their audiences, is you're not above anyone. Like, and I think that's such an important aspect to all of this, is just understand that you're building a community. They're supporting you. You're not in this ivory tower. I'm still in the Discord every day. I'm still like talking to people every day. Most of the reason we built and like decisions we made, there's been times where I've been arguing with my team about something, and we just threw the question in the Discord, and we're like, guys, what do you think? And we
Hmm.
have like 180,000 people in the Discord, right? And it was decided. Like it was a huge argument in the Discord, right? But it was really cool to have something like that because you have this, you're not better than them. Like, I'm sorry, like, maybe you think that way, but at the end of the day, they're keeping your project alive. They're going to be the ones who are using it. They're your, users, customers, right? Like, no one wants to build a product that doesn't have any users, right? And then no one wants to be a user of anything that doesn't have any products, right? And so we've been curating this kind of, and I love our community to absolute death. And I think that's the problem, is you also just need to enjoy it, because, as I kind of mentioned, they're part of the co-op, right? They're going to be a
Yeah.
part of the co-op, and it's always going to be the people, and this is, I think, one of the beauties of crypto is, number one, it's completely global, and number two, it's, everyone's going to have this like aligned incentive, right? Like people who want to see the project succeed are the people who are using the project, and the people who benefit from the project's success, right? Like they're not following us because we're making memes or something like that, or they want to, I don't know, they want to read something that we wrote. Maybe they do, but a lot of it is just the nature of crypto and the nature of aligned incentives and the nature of helping projects like this. It's really amazing that I don't
Yeah.
think you actually ever see.
Well, it's really cool to hear that. I mean, it's also helps you build your product too, right? You can get answers to
Mm-hmm.
the questions you're trying to
Yeah.
create. You don't always know what your customers want until you ask them. And if you have that community, you can get immediate feedback and then build what someone we had a guest on a couple of days ago, PhD at MIT and Harvard, and he was, astrophysicist and was building space
Oh, great.
suits
I can't wait to come after that podcast.
for the lunar for lunar walking, and his question
Mm-hmm.
was, I asked, what did you do at NASA that changed, how they were building spacesuits, and his response was, I just went to the astronauts that were going to be walking around and bending over and grabbing tools and said, tell me what you want to be doing when you're walking on the moon, and then we're going to build the suit around you, not build a suit and hope you fit into
Yeah.
it, and then you can't bend over and you can't do the things you need to do your job. So to have that community, I think, is incredible, and to keep it up and to keep it growing is,
Definitely.
nothing but great things come out of it. Let's talk a little bit about a concept that you define, or is defined as generalized abstraction. What does that mean?
This way we're gonna get technical. Just want to let you know, but it's an industry term, right? Like it's a way that we describe ourselves to the industry, which effectively is like I could talk to you and I could say, hey, we want to make a Web2 experience, right? But when I talk to someone like one of some of my friends in the industry, they're like, well, what the fuck does that mean? Right. And I'm like, well, so we use the term generalized abstraction, and we can kind of split this off. We can kind of split this off as, into different sects. And you can read this in our white papers. We do actually break these off into different sects, but we kind of very specifically tackle a lot of different points, whether that be like, I almost got really technical there. Whether it be like being signature agnostic, like doesn't matter what signing schema you're using or cryptography method you're using, we can kind of support it. Kind of concept of wallets, as I mentioned, right? It's definitely more for the crypto native, that kind of term, which is, I find it a lot easier to kind of talk to this community of like Web2 who's like, hey, I'm mimicking that, right? And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. But the amount of work it genuinely takes to do that is stellar, to say the least. Otherwise, it would have been done, right? And so when we talk about generalized abstraction and kind of how we fit into the modular crypto stack, it is, it is a very crypto specific term of being a part of the, kind of being above execution environments and being able to kind of settle on, be symbiotic with every chain, and then also being able to provide the benefits that we provide.
Got it. Cool. For all the developers out there that are building in crypto, hopefully you understand what that is, and hopefully you apply it, or more importantly,
I tried.
reach out to Burnt and download the white paper, by the way. Let's look at the business as you kind of look forward. How big of a market do you see with your infrastructure, with your tooling that's going to be used by, developers, by companies in this space?
Limitless. I mean, how big can the internet get?
Huge.
The answer to that question, yeah. I mean, I can't give you an answer. I wish
Yeah.
I could put a number on the max, but I don't think there is. I mean, I don't think I can. I don't think there is a max.
Yeah. So if you think about, for example, just take one concept of smart contracts, being able to do a transaction online, decentralized, auditable, kind of that use case with your infrastructure or your tools, that could be on the back end of essentially any of that. Is that correct? Yeah. So that's huge.
Yeah,
because I think that's where the world's
we
going.
work with prior solutions too.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Us too.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's switch gears here. As you look into 2024, what are you excited about your company? What's on the roadmap? If you can share, what's coming down the pipe that you really can't get enough sleep for? What's shareable?
What's shareable? I think it's like it's where we are like as a company, right? I think we're just about to kind of have our big mainnet launch and be able for all the money that we've kind of been operating with to kind of function in real use cases. And I think what I'm excited about, and I know 2024 will be this year, is, and it's hard to explain, but you can feel this inflection point, at least in XION, right? Which is, something that like, hey, some of these things we've tested in a crypto native environment, some of these things we haven't, right? Or like some of these things that we did in a crypto non-native environment, right? But like, fuck it, I could do like a QR code around New York and, have people who scan it, they've enter their email, they create an account with the product on the chain, but then we can then like give something to those people who participated in the campaign, right? And it's like immediately we've gotten rid of all the friction. Like you would have never been able to do that before. You are able to, you saw some of these fun headlines of like Starbucks paid $40 million to deploy on like Polygon for a loyalty application that just didn't happen, right? And there's a reason it didn't happen, is because people who use their Starbucks cards are like, they're not going to go to fucking Polygon. They're not going to buy Polygon. Like whoever does, most people don't know what Polygon is, and so it's we're out of that expectation, I think, this year that you need to know crypto. And I can feel that with the product, and I can feel that with the energy that kind of happens. Plus, so like I would say the exciting things is then what we can do with that and how quickly we can scale.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We're going to go into, we're going to totally switch gears now. This is going to be more personal about you. So 3 questions, 3 simple answers. You've created a great concept, an idea, and you're bringing it to market. Where do you go to think big or to brainstorm personally?
Personally, to brainstorm, I have this room. It's just we call it the podcast room. I obviously, clearly don't utilize it for podcasting, but it's effectively like the sleeping room, like at the company, where it's like I'm looking at it now, but it's just a couch, and most of the time I'm sleeping there, or like napping there. I have a good work-life balance, I swear. But I don't know. It's just dark. There's a curtain. It's like blackout blinds, blackout everything. It's like a blackout room. And I leave my phone, I leave my computer here, and there's just times where I'll just sit, and I love that. Like, it sounds a lot more depressing the more that I say it out loud, but I swear that it's like it's more like I would say I more meditate than anything. Like I don't think that it's like, it's definitely not like, oh, brainstorming time, how do I solve this issue? Like that's a constant effort. But if I ever just like, I never go there to solve a singular problem. I always there just to clear the head, and then once you have a clear head, then the solutions come.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Where do you go when on this roller coaster of building a startup where you have to stay positive? Like, what do you do to do that, to keep the perspective as you're going through the ups and downs of a company as the leader? What works for you?
What works for me? It's how do I stay positive? I don't think I don't think you need to stay positive, right? Like it's okay to not. I think that's maybe my answer to that is it's okay to not. Like, don't force it. Like, there will be good times, and the good is good and the bad is bad, and that's okay. And understanding where you are and understanding that with good there will be bad, with bad there will be good. I don't think you need to be happy all the time. I don't think you need to be sad all the time. I think, I think that there's a lot of pressure to smile and pretend everything's all right. And a lot of the times it's okay to not, to say it's not okay. Like, to sit there and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea where we're going. I don't know. And you have people who are listening to you, right? And people will be there, people won't be there. But, I really think at the end of the day, it's about kind of keeping that mentality and keeping this kind of realism, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Especially in crypto, when it's just like terrible. It's like, oh, the industry's down. No, the biggest exchanges collapsed, and these guys rugged. Oh well, okay, another exchange collapsed, and interest rates are going up, and it's just like, it's like, I don't know. I always compared it, and like sometimes you just die by dumb luck, right? Like, I know people who just had money in FTX, had a treasury in FTX, FTX went down, company didn't exist anymore. So there's a certain point, especially in crypto, you get used to the punches, right? And as a founder, you just You just got to take the punches. It's okay. You can bruise. It's fine, but get back up, right? Or don't, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to always get back up. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's important. Well,
Yeah.
like, get back up in the same horse.
I love that. I mean, it's about being honest with yourself too. And yeah, nobody's going to stay positive all the time. Some people have different ways of doing it, but I think the truth always comes out and should come out, and be who you are, but
Yeah.
get up, because you
Get up.
you are the one that decides the future of your company. If you decide to close it, nothing's going to make it work unless you want to make it work. So that's great. What's something you've learned from another found?
I was just going to say, this might answer your next question, but it was like, one of the main things that struck me, especially in that kind of conversation, is it's, a company never really dies because it runs out of money. The founder just runs out of energy, right? And you can have all the money in the world and the founder has no energy, and you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that happen more times than I want to share, but absolutely. It's the leader comes down to the mentality and your desire and your passion, or, you burnt out. You got to find a way. And and I think it's Y Combinator that says,
and even if that means taking like a break, like take the break, but get back.
100%. Yeah. I think it's Y Combinator that said something like, all you got to do is just continue to get up to survive. And if you survive, you can win. Just keep going and you'll figure it out. Yeah. For you, have you gotten any advice from other founders in the crypto space and a different space, other founders that are building companies that you look back on, you think, that's something that I want to share with other founders that was helpful for you or that was priceless that you can share?
Don't worry about failing. It's from another founder, but I've tweaked it a little because now I say it a lot, which is, it's better to fail spectacularly than succeed quietly, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to fail. I fucking hate that though. I hate the saying "don't be afraid to fail" so much. I just, in a different context of like, swing for the fences. Like that's the idea is don't. I hate this this failure fetish. I think it's fucking stupid. Oh, you didn't fail. You just like shut the fuck up. Like, I hate that so much. But like, swing for the fences no matter what. Like, don't be afraid. Don't fail. Like, it's not that don't be afraid to fail. Just don't fucking fail. You won't. Like, I promise you, people who ever think you're going to do something and you fail, you're not. Like, you'll figure it out. Everything works out in the end. Like, unless something happens. But, I hate this failure fetish. I hate that so much. And so when I hear it's a little side note there, but, aim for the fucking fences. Like, always try for the home run. Even if it's not guaranteed, like, who gives a shit, like, at all?
Yeah, no doubt. I love that. Shoot for the moon and hit the fence post, but at least you shot for, the moon. So there you go. As we wrap up here, Burnt, I just want to thank you first and foremost for coming on and sharing your story. To me, it's one of the more intriguing stories about what you're building and where it's going to go, because it sounds and feels like the future, which I can't wait to hear how this year goes and have you back on. And so for others that want to learn more about you or learn more about Burnt or XION, where can they find you, or where can they find your company?
Yeah, definitely probably Twitter's easiest. Sorry, X. Burnt_XION. But otherwise, check out burnt.com, XION.burnt.com. Definitely read the white paper for those of you who are curious. We also have a blog and documentation that's pretty solid for those who don't want to make it through the entire sludge of the white paper, which I totally understand. But yeah, definitely, I would say Twitter is probably the best spot. We're very active on kind of announcing there. Discord if you actually want to chat. We also have a Telegram announcement channel. Or honestly, what you're going to be able to do is you're just going to be able to read the news and you'll also see us there. So
I love that. Very cool. Well, thanks for joining, and thanks for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you spent your time with us here today. My name is Jake Aaron Villarreal. I'm the host of the show. Can't wait to connect with you all in the next episode. Until then, take care. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible, and for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.